Buffalo Bills general manager Brandon Beane yesterday sat in front of the cameras and he was talking about really 6, 7, 8 reasons why he didn't make a trade yesterday. A lot of Bills Mafia is upset about it. We look at our roster. We look at, frankly, the injury reports that are just coming out. Here's today's injury report on Thursday, where we've got a ton of guys right now. If you even look at this with me, AJ Epinesa did not practice. Sam Franklin did not practice. Shaq Thompson, again, did not practice. He's had that hamstring injury. A lot of guys are limited. Jimbo is struggling with potentially a high ankle injury with the mechanism there in his leg. We've got a lot of injuries, yet Brandon Beane at the same time, who had opportunities all fall to make a trade, to make a move, didn't. And it's got a lot of Bills Mafia pretty upset. Even though we took the win against the Chiefs on Sunday, check this out right now. We've got about 25% of the fan base that's cautiously hyped, and frankly, they still need the Buffalo Bills to go out there and prove it. A lot of people are holding their breath because the injuries are real. But again, the moment of truth is, or the moment of realization for us maybe, is that the team is 6-2. We just handily beat the Chiefs, even though it was only by a touchdown. That game was ours, and there was mistakes that we made in that game. But a lot of you guys, 77% of you guys, are still just on the bandwagon. You are still excited. You know, there's still some holes on this team that we need to be talking about regularly. Of course, Michael Hoyt has torn his Achilles. I saw that he just had surgery, so he is actually, of course, going to be out for the year, but he's on the road to recovery already. Long process of that return, But again, a lot of you guys are excited, but it's left Brandon Beane not making a move, left a lot of confusion and I think even frustration. And today in this video, I want to break down really 6 reasons why Brandon Beane, and he talked about these yesterday in the press conference, why Brandon Beane didn't make a move. But before we get into it, again, my name is Colin. This is Crack the Table, where all Bills, no breaks, every single day, breaking down Buffalo Bills content. If you're just looking for fresh content when it comes to our team, the Buffalo Bills, make sure to like, subscribe. Again, every single like, every single comment does help me out. It pushes me out further into the algorithm, and there's people who don't see these videos because they're not engaged with. And part of that's because I'm growing as a content creator, but the other part of it is I've got to enhance engagement. So today is more of a conversational video, and within that, I've got 6 reasons, again, from Brandon Beane. We're going to get right into it. But with that, with these 6 reasons, let me know down below which one you are most affirming of and which one are you most upset with if you are on that side of the spectrum. But the first piece of logic that we see from Brandon Beane, the first thing that we saw in the press conference is that we built the roster. He said that we built the roster to limit the need for trades. We know this offseason we shelled out almost $700 million. Our owner did almost $700 million of contracts to a handful of guys that are now the key foundational cornerstones. The structure of the team, the structure of the contracts outside of this dead money that we've got to acknowledge was hopefully supposed to be allocated towards players that could have staying power and depth, that could have staying power regardless of the inevitability of injuries, right? And I think there is some truth here, right? The young players, both the ones recently drafted, the first and the second year players, have been contributors. Now, you could be upset at Keon Coleman still, but you know, Cole Bishop just had a great game, and some of these other rookies, Maxwell Hairston looks really good. There's some other guys, Jordan Hancock, and of course, Deion Walker, Jackson Hawes. We'll see. We're probably going to get TJ Sanders back in a little bit. But again, there's a lot of guys on our team right now that are supposed to be not just role players, but key contributors at this point in the season. Though, again, when we look at this practice report, again, right on the screen, we know that so much of our team is injured. Why didn't Brandon Beane maybe add 1 or 2 small pieces, even depth moves? Again, he said it this way, that the way that we built our team was to avoid trades. It sounds good until you remember that football is really a game of attrition, that teams that come up short down the stretch are usually the most injured teams. And that's when you look at, some of the teams over the last couple of years, like whether it be the Chiefs last year when they played against the Eagles, or whether you look at the Lions last year, who were decimated by injuries, or even how a lot of you guys right now feel about the Buffalo Bills. Depth is good, but playoff football is really won by difference makers. And Brandon Beane, even in the press conference yesterday, quoted or mentioned this signing, the late season signing last year of Jordan Phillips, and how in the playoffs he was a contributor. But you can't always count on that, even though we just, of course, signed Mathis yesterday. But again, the question I think for us is, does this roster, as it currently sits, have what it needs, and does it have what it takes to beat the Colts, who are frankly clicking on all cylinders outside of this game against the Steelers? Who does it have the ability to beat the Chiefs in the playoffs, which is like the boogeyman? Do we have the ability to beat the Broncos or the Ravens? Now, again, the AFC seemingly is wide open this year, so all the more, why wouldn't you spend extra money or extra capital to bring in a difference-making player? And again, I think that's the real issue. It's not just depth, because I think free agents are holding out not on the waivers, but literally as guys just off the street that want to come be a part of a potential Super Bowl favorite team. I believe right now the Bills are still top 3 in odds to win the Super Bowl, but it's not just a depth thing. It's do we have the guys who have the playmaking ability to really win us games when it counts? But the second thing that he talked about in this press conference was that trade talks require mutual agreement. And so he mentioned in the press conference, he said, and I quote, "We had conversations, but nothing lined up." So he was actively out looking for trade partners. He was actively out. We don't know who. Of course, these teams, these agents want to keep a lot of this stuff hush hush as much as they can. So we don't know exactly what it was. But other teams seemingly just wanted more compensation than what Brandon Beane was offering, which again can tell you something about the conservative nature of Brandon Beane. And a lot of you guys are looking at Howie Roseman, or you're looking at some of these other general managers who've just thrown a lot of picks around, who said, hey, we're going in this year. The Colts just gave up 2 first-round picks and a receiver, I believe a second-round receiver from last year, 2 years ago, in the draft a couple years ago, and now he's on the Jets. That's a lot for Sauce Gardner. That's one player, and he's simply one play away from having no value on the team. But again, we shouldn't make panic trades. We shouldn't give up a second round for a rental. Even the conversation around Rashid Shaheed to the Seahawks, it could have been great to have a plug-and-play guy like that for the later part of the season. But again, a rental for 8 games, 9 games when he has no chemistry with Josh Allen, that doesn't sound like a recipe for success. It sounds like a recipe for disaster. But again, a lot of you are suggesting that a player, a high pedigree player, would come in and he'd contribute right away. Brandon Beane talked specifically about this, how there's a ramp-up time, how the playbook needs to get brought back a little bit, and that the whole playbook doesn't just go to the standard in which that receiver is in. And so ultimately, that receiver only ends up going in plays. We saw this with Amari Cooper a couple of years ago. He only goes in plays that they know. And sometimes the receivers don't even know because they're so new to the playbook and the team. Again, it also, in this suggests that other teams just weren't valuing the picks of the Buffalo Bills as high as maybe Brandon Beane desired. And again, Brandon Beane is not getting reckless. He's not getting aggressive to the point of panicking and spending stupid picks and stupid money on players that don't really have a long-term fit in this organization. Again, this one's kind of neutral, but it was pretty vague. The third thing that Brandon Beane talked about was the cap limitations, which are very, very real. Again, we know we just restructured Teron Johnson's contract, and he did mention in the press conference, which I think this is really important, that he had other players on Monday lined up to potentially change the structure of their deals if they could get something done. And I learned something new personally, that those restructures have to be done by 4 p.m. on Monday before the trade deadline. I didn't know that, but basically the big names by the time that they, the guys maybe that they were looking for with some of the cap limitations that they had were off the table. I think potentially Rashid Shaheed there, but again, that's the tension. Teams like the Rams or teams like the Eagles in years past have seemingly bent the cap, and there's this narrative that the salary cap is not real. It in fact is real. Now you can have there's a seemingly a strong, terrible strawman argument actually that people will say, well, it's not real, right? You can do whatever it is. You can always push back money. But Brandon Beane even mentioned this. He says, hey, if we bring a $25 million a year guy into our building, into our roster, then we might have to cut some of our other core essential players in a year or in 2 years because the cap is in fact real. And again, there's things behind this where we don't necessarily get to control every dollar that we've spent, or we don't necessarily get to take back the bad dollars that we've spent on some of these contracts, i.e. the Von Millers, i.e. even like Dawson Knox's. Again, there's real financial liabilities with contracts. But a couple other things here. The teams in our division would not make a trade with us. I'm wondering if Garrett Wilson and Jalen Waddle, especially later on after 3 o'clock when Quinnen Williams was traded, I wonder if these two receivers were on the mind of Brandon Beane. Of course, both have big contracts over $20 million a year. I believe Jalen Waddles is 25, and I believe Garrett Wilson's is in the 30 range. And again, most trades I think don't happen because these teams, they don't want the Buffalo Bills to get better, and there wasn't a lot of other teams that had good receiving options with potentially good fits for us and from a cap perspective available. Again, I don't think Brandon Beane was in the market to trade a first-round pick for a non-proven player. We've got 5 receivers on our team that are wide receiver 2s, or however you want to, name that, or however you want to talk about that. But again, this is, I think, one of the reasons that the trade, a trade didn't happen is because the receivers that were potentially available on teams that are not performing well were just in our division, and it didn't last, or it didn't work out for us in that. But again, the 5th reason, I think staying disciplined matters more than splash moves. And I think this is the heart of really what Brandon Beane was arguing. He believes that the core is good, the young players are ascending, and the best version of this roster is still developing. Again, I'm of this mind too, where I think the core of our team and these young players are actually going to be great contributors long term. And so I think our window is not closing. I think it's still wide open. And this is, I think, where the trust comes in from us as fans is are we going to trust Brandon Beane's leadership? But maybe the question we have to ask of Brandon Beane is, has he earned our trust? He's made deals like trading, Minnesota for Stephon Diggs. He did, use draft picks to trade up and get Josh Allen. Yes, he did, make stupid signings like Von Miller or, some of these other contracts along the way. But in other ways, he hasn't broken our trust completely. He's fielded a team that has won 5 straight AFC East, divisions. And so again, there's just a lot there. Has he earned our trust? Yes. But has he earned some distrust as well? Yes, I believe he has. But the 6th thing is he talked about how the roster management is ongoing, how there's guys that are still coming to our roster. I used the Jordan Phillips example, but also, guys like TJ Sanders and Daquan Jones are only probably a week or so, 2 weeks, hopefully, away from returning. There's going to be some practice squad elevations. Don't overlook Corey Couch, guys. But then street agent additions, again, like the Jordan Phillips, I acknowledge these guys might have a bigger impact down the road. We don't necessarily bring these guys in as these developmental ceiling players at this point in the season. Usually what we do is we do that in the offseason. But the guys that we want to be signing are guys that want to come in and contribute as much as they can to try to win a Super Bowl. Just look at how Jordan Poyer and the rhetoric around his time in Buffalo is being communicated right now. He's here for one reason and one reason only. It's to be the guy the team needs so that they can be ready and in position to win a Super Bowl when they need to. So for you, Bills Mafia today, do you believe that Brandon Beane, his logic is good, or is there some places, some holes in the ways that he's thinking that you really want to press? I'm actually just broadly wanting to have the conversation around that. Do you believe that the young talent on this team has what it takes to actually push to a Super Bowl? And do you believe that we can win in January, even if our record is, our record might be, 15-2 or 15-3 or 14 and whatever it might be. But do you have the faith in this team, in this roster, in this coaching staff right now to push us further into January? Lots to talk about, lots to say. But again, in all of it, my name is Colin. This is Crack the Table. We're all Bills, no breaks, breaking down Buffalo Bills content every single day. Have a great day. God bless. Go Bills.